Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to have you on this session. This is a very special session on women and relationships. We have Dr. Kamali Sampath Kumar. She was there with us on the last session on women and wellness, and we have received wonderful feedback from everyone who's been out there participating on these sessions. We've incorporated a lot of views from the participants this time. And let me introduce Dr. Kamali first. Dr. Kamali is a graduate from Kastuba Medical College, Mangalore. She completed her postgraduate studies in addictions, treatment and prevention in Canada. She has been a clinician in the field of addictions and mental health for past 10 years in Canada and has immense experience. Currently, she is a behavioral consultant specializing in concurrent disorders at Kaveri Hospitals in Chennai. She is an expert in treating post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety, stress-related disorders, mental health, and addiction issues. She excels in delivering patient-centered care, culturally appropriate clinical services, and evidence-based treatment in a holistic way. May I request Dr. Kamli to now take over?
Thank you, Ms. Mo. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Kamali with you today to share a little bit about relationships and ourselves. As women, how do we take this forward? Because this is something which most of us actually have a little bit of challenge sometimes, and sometimes we actually struggle with it. So looking at it would give us this is just an overview of what we are going to have in the forthcoming webinars. So just before we start our presentation, I would like to start our presentation with a quote by one of my favorite authors of all time, Harold Clem, from the book Love, the Keystone of Life. To get love, you must give love wherever you can and whenever you can, because that is the law of love, says Harold. Harold is a very good friend of mine, has been a guide, and has always helped me when I've been having struggles in my own personal relationships and so on and so forth. So for me, this quote actually makes a lot of sense, because if I want something, I should be ready to give first. And that's just the way life goes on. So with this quote, I would like to start us off on relationships. If I look at relationship, I just wanted to know where we stand. The objective for this presentation is basically to give an overview of what kinds of relationships we are in and how people define relationships and how actually the dictionary defines it is the starting point I thought would work for us. As I went through that, I just looked at Webster as usual and saw the state of being related or interrelated, the relation connecting or binding participants in a relationship as kinship or a specific instance or type of kinship. The other definition is a state of affairs existing between those having relations or dealings, had a good relationship with his family, for example, or a romantic or a passionate attachment. This is how a dictionary defines relationship. But when it comes to you and me, how do you define a relationship and how do I define a relationship is most of the time going to depend upon ourselves and what we believe in. So, how do we define relationships then? For me, basically a relationship is an interaction between two individuals which goes to the next level depending upon respect, trust, and understanding. So basically that's how I look at relationships. So when I look at relationships like that, I see that when two people are in a room, for example, and they have respect for each other, they have a mutual understanding, and they also know how to honor each other, then that relationship is going to become a wonderful relationship because they have the qualities which will take them to the next level, right? So they will actually be that way with each other and they will create that kind of an environment wherever they go. That's basically what a basis for relationship we can think of. Coming to that, what are the types of relationship? As that, just keeping in mind those things, for our discussion, we are going to look at relationship broadly into intimate, family and extended family, friends and relatives, and professional relationships for today. Because this is an overview, we will get to intimate relationships and professional relationships in detail in our webinars, in our following webinars. So for now, just for our discussion's sake, we're going to look at these things as an overview. So a bird's viewpoint, what we call. So when you look at intimate relationships, I'm thinking about, in my mind, when I put that word intimate, I really, for example, when we sent out the invite for this webinar, we did say we are gently going to move away from men-women relationships, intimate relationships, and talk about it in a very, very broad category. That's how we want to talk about it. So when I say intimate relationships, I still mean a romantic relationship, a live-in relationship. It could be a marital relationship, or it could be a friendly relationship. These are intimate relationships, basically, where there is a give and take amongst two people. And sometimes it may not be between two actually people from different sexes. It could be an intimate relationship between two individuals. So understanding that intimacy doesn't mean that this is how it is going to be. So when we look at intimate relationships, what are some of the realms that we would take into a discussion? That's a lovely slide I came across. I just saw these words and I thought, oh, you know what, that's just so worth it. Because I saw these cute little elephants with the heart, and I also saw this, for better or worse, but not for granted. Very interestingly, when I saw that picture, it really created a lot of thought process in me. Because as I'm coming to this presentation, trust me when I say this, I actually don't do it from an expert point of view. I do it from a seat just beside you, because if I look at myself as a woman who is a professional woman in a relationship, a long-term relationship, and I have a family, then I just start looking at all those things, right? So in an intimate relationship, what are we looking for? We basically actually are looking for understanding, respect, trust, and support. Especially from our culture when we look at it. We'll come to it a little later too. When we look at these things, the question arises, how do I see this? And then where do I take it from? So for better or for worse, but not for granted, stood out to me because, as you all know, I was born and brought up in India, lived in India and have traveled quite a few places, and then lived in Canada for a long time. From my personal experience, what I recognized was I went from a country where I do things differently to a country where everything that I was taught is the opposite in the other part of the world. So what I realized was, not for granted, it means a lot to me right now, because in our relationships, when we are going through certain things, we actually stay in the relationship thinking that this is what is the best for the family, this is what's the best for me, and forget honoring ourselves. And as women, we are actually taught to take care of others. So think about all these things. As I'm talking to you, if you have a question, please make a jot note of it and park the question, because this session we really are going to do a little bit more interactive, because that's the feedback I got from all of you out there. So most of you said if we can do some practical things, it would really help us to be engaged in this webinar. So what we're going to be doing is, for intimate relationships, I just want you to do a little bit of, let's say we will take about 2 minutes of your time and do something. Just take a little piece of paper if you have one and start writing down what are those qualities that you have in this relationship that you really, really admire and like about. In that intimate relationship, whichever you are in, what do you like about it, and what are some of the things that you really do not like so much? So if you take 2 minutes, we are on a timer now, so I'm going to stop talking and give you that contemplation time where you're going to start writing the things that you like about the relationship you're in now and the things that you are a little bit do not like or struggle with. All right? Here we go. So, where are we with the list right now? As I asked you to do this, guess what I was doing? I was making a laundry list too. So when I made my laundry list, this is what I came up with. So I hope something matches with you and me. Like for example, what do I like about my relationship right now? The love that we share. We both love cooking, so we do that. And then we both take care of our children really well. And then my partner actually helps me travel around the places, especially when I need to be dropped off like that in a jiffy. I get my ride really well because I don't drive a two-wheeler. I'm very comfortable with a four-wheeler. But in Chennai, if you have to get to a place on time, you have to be really good with a two-wheeler, you know. So I have these as advantages. At the same time, what do I struggle with a little bit? A little bit of arguments here and there, and then a little more of expectations. I'm a professional woman, so sometimes, just like how all of you out there are, I cannot keep time. So for example, if I say I'll be there for 4 o'clock or 4:30, unfortunately sometimes I'm not able to be there on time. And then when my patients call, for example, if I get a call in the middle of the night, say about 11 o'clock, 11:30 when we are actually in bed, and then I get a call, I will pick up my phone. So to make sure that everything is all right with my patient. So these are some of the things with which our partners can struggle with. So making this list actually helps you and me understand that this is really practical. We can be in a webinar. That doesn't mean we don't have to understand or be interactive with each other. So that laundry list and increased expectations I was talking about. So how many of you have similar things with each other? So if you look at it, there are positives in our relationships. At the same time, there are some things we will struggle with. Keep this as a parking lot question and we will move on to the next slide. Family and extended family. This is so unique to our culture and some of the other soft touch cultures. For example, family and extended family, I mean the inner circle is us. So if you're in a marital relationship, the husband, the wife, the children are the inner circle. The family around that is the family I'm talking about. Your parents, my parents, our sister, the sister-in-law, all that is family. And then comes the extended family. Each one of us have these intricate relationships, you know. It just grows like that. So you can imagine how we in our relationships are. So for example, somebody will give me a call and say, my sister-in-law's sister's brother's daughter is coming to see you, doctor. So can you please take care of her? And I'd say, thank you. Sure, why not? Anytime. That's the kind of relationship we have. So not only that, we actually value these relationships. So if you remember, if you had an invitation list that you were making, for example, go back a few times and think of the invitation list that you are making for an invite. For example, it's a birthday party, or it's a housewarming ceremony, or it is a wedding, or it is an engagement party, any one of those things. Remember how you used to make a list? And see, you thought you were going to invite only 200 people and ended up with 500. How did that grow? That is what is so unique about our culture. So keeping in mind that our extended family is not just your marital family and their families, it's sometimes more than that. So understanding how this is going to affect our relationship. So for example, let's say somebody down the lane, say let's say let me take my example instead of someone else's, just to keep sentiments intact. So let's say my sister's brother-in-law, somebody down the lane met me on the streets and I knew this person, the person knew me, just walked away without looking at me, did not acknowledge me. It offends me. For example, that is. So if that happens to you, for example, if somebody says something and it offends you, if it offends you, ask yourself, what's going on here? What did I expect? So how did this affect me, or how did this hurt me? Why is this hurting me? Because we take it personally, you know, after some time. It's like, how dare this person do this to me, or how dare you do this to me? So we do that to ourselves. So understanding that. So that is what I'm talking about, family and extended family. And understanding there are going to be things that are not going to be done our way, and it is still going to matter to us how we are going to manage this. So make a note of that. Again, if we want to take a minute with this and say one memory that really is hurting you even today, maybe it happened 10 years ago, maybe it happened 5 days ago or 5 months ago or 5 weeks ago, it doesn't matter. What is that one memory which has become a hook with the family and the extended family for you? Because trust me, all of us struggle like that, and all of us have something which is holding us back. So if there is one memory that is bothering you, because we are going to do a visualization technique towards the end of this, so that will help you. If you make sure that you understand what is that one thing that is holding you back, make a jot note of that with this. For this exercise, we're just going to take about a minute's time, and we're going to say, okay, this is one memory which is actually holding me back, or it is hurting me, or this memory is too painful for me, or this is something which is stopping me sometimes. When I just remember it, it gives me a bitter taste in my mouth. Sometimes that happens, when you've had a very bad experience and somebody has said or done something that has hurt you, it stays with you and it creates a memory. So that can become a humongous stress factor in a relationship. And it may not even be something that happened between you and your partner or you and your child or somebody who's in the relationship. It could be something that happened because of someone else, that this relationship is getting affected because of that. So this memory is going to make a lot of difference to you. If you want to take a minute to just see what that could be. So I hope that was helpful. Now that we have that memory, we're going to set it aside, and then we're going to look at our friends and relatives. What are we going to do about our friends and relatives? Because now family and extended family, friends and relatives, if you notice, this is something which I've wondered as a child. Every time we get an invitation for a wedding, with best compliments, and then they would say friends and relatives. As a child, I've always asked, why friends and relatives? What is this? Because with best compliments, I never understood what the best compliments meant in the first place. So when I asked my dad, what does best compliments mean, Dad? Then he sat me down and explained to me, best compliments means best wishes. We want you to be there. We want your company. And we want you to visit us and bless us. That's what we are asking when we say this. And then it said friends and relatives. So when it said friends and relatives, as I was writing this, I was thinking, how interesting that we would be discussing about this, Our friends become our relatives, and our friends sometimes do become our families, and our friends actually become our family members after some time. So we actually are in a relationship like that. So understanding that is very important for us. So what does it mean to us to be friends with people? What does it qualify? What are the things that we are working on when we have to be in a relationship? So what does this mean to us? Our friends are someone who we trust, and that trust actually brings them closer to us. Sometimes things that we cannot discuss with our families, things that we really will not tell anyone else, we would say to this trusted friend. So what I'm suggesting is, when we have such friendships, it's very nurturing for us. As women, what we have to recognize is that these trusting relationships, these trusting friendships can actually become a little painful for us. Understanding that. This is a general topic, so I want you to understand that as women, there are certain things we have to be aware about. We have to know that having our friends is very important for us, because it is something which gives us comfort, it is something which gives us support, and our friends also are somebody we can depend upon. So it gives us comfort, it gives us support, and our friends actually gives us that dependability. I can depend on my friend when I need them. So because these three things are all there, what we have to recognize is we have to think about it a little differently and say, how am I going to be in this relationship? Because if my friend is supportive, has provided comfort when I needed it, and has been very dependable, how am I going to be in this relationship? So it's very important that we have that too. A word of caution. Why a word of caution? As women, we tend to speak a lot. We tend to share a lot. So because we tend to share a lot, we really have to recognize how this is going to affect us. One of the things I want you to understand is please be aware of things that you may not want to say about others or hear about yourself being said by others. So those are the things I'm talking about. Relatives. We have extended families. We have people who we've met once in a while, and we meet them once in a year or once in 2 years sometimes. But they still are our relatives. So it matters to us what they think. Sometimes there's so much pressure in our relationships that we have to stand up to their expectations. We have to stand up to someone else's expectation. So it creates a lot of problems for us, wondering if that person has that, what am I supposed to have? I should have something better than them. So these are some things that I'm talking about. Listening to yourself. When I think about friends and relatives, I'd like you to ask yourself a question. Where do I stand with them? And how does this friendship help me or does not help me? There may be somebody you're struggling with, and that somebody may be your very good friend. So how are you going to help yourself in this relationship? How are you going to take care of yourself in this relationship? You don't want to lose the friendship. That's very natural. None of us want to lose our best friends. But if it is really an unhealthy relationship for you, how are you going to say no to it? Or how are you going to set some boundaries with this person? We're going to come to look at it. So, again, we take a minute here to think about what is one thing that is really, really bothering you about a friend or a relative, something that they said or did. Why am I taking it into an experiential mode right now? Because it's a post-lunch session 1, and I don't want all of you to be like, you're not able to see me, I'm not able to see you, so we have to keep this engaging, right? So if you take a moment to write about this, what we will do is, towards the end of the today what our plan is we'll end it a little more earlier, and then we'll have a longer question and answer session so that you get more time to discuss this with us. All right? So take a minute to say, what is this one thing that is really, really bothering you? Because you may have a zillion things that's actually happened in relationship. It does happen for each and every one of us. But what is that one thing that really bothers you? So that when we do the visualization technique, you can actually help yourself by relieving some of the pain, some of the discomfort, some of the emotional baggage that you're carrying. Okay? Take a minute, please, to think about something that's really bothering you and make a jot note. Now, I hope you got that point. Coming to the professional relationship, all of us here, most of us are entrepreneurs, most of us are working women, most of us are professionals. And we work with everybody here. So we work with our equals, we work with our subordinates, we work with our superiors, and that's a very big chunk of our time taken out of our schedules. Say about 10 hours, we are out of the home and we are with other people. Yeah, sometimes more than that. So say then this becomes a very big chunk of our relationships, doesn't it? So knowing what it is to be in a professional relationship is very important. Understanding what it is to be a professional and how do you follow that professionalism in your relationships, because we have the penguins as a picture for this. Interesting, isn't it? They're called emperor penguins, and they are the tallest guys around. They are about 6 feet tall, all of tallness and shufflingness. That's what I like about penguins, you know. So, but the thing is, the uniqueness is they actually have a leader in the group, you know, and they listen and they actually follow their rules. It's a very, very interesting thing to notice penguins. There's a movie by name March of the Penguins. It's a fantastic movie. If anybody has had a chance to watch it, I really appreciate you watching it. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's a good movie to watch because it shows us the skill set. We keep saying animals don't have a sixth sense, but it really, really shows us how they follow certain things. For me, in a professional relationship, boundaries are very important. We have to know about boundaries. What is my boundary? Where do I stand? And how do I honor it? Understanding what my boundaries are very important, because sometimes we just don't know where we should stand, you know. Understanding that professional boundary. At the same time, making it not so very strong. I'm not talking about very strong boundaries. I'm speaking about actually a boundary which is invisible, but then you will be able to follow it. Understanding that is very important in professional relationships. And also understanding this is what is the most important thing. If you do something, this is something I would follow. So understanding boundaries, understanding respect is the base for it. Also understanding mutual support and mutual understanding. That understanding is a very simple word, but it carries a lot of weightage. Before someone can change, someone can actually understand us. If we try to be there for them and understand what they are going through, creates a really, really good working relationship. For relationships in a profession to work, it really takes a lot of give and take. And that give and take comes from mutual respect and mutual understanding. So making sure that we know this is very important for us. So that is professional relationship, boundaries, safety, respect, understanding. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to it. Boundaries, very important, mutual respect, mutual understanding, and safety. Safety will come when there is trust. So trust will actually give us that safety. So this is what I'm talking about. Give it a thought and then we will move on. So now take a minute to just settle down a little bit. Make yourselves comfortable because we've had this discussion so far and I've asked you to jot down certain experiences that have been painful. Because I've done that, I know what I have done. I've actually opened something up in you which is really painful. So here is a moment I want you to take, and we are going to do a visualization technique. This is something you can do in your day-to-day life with absolutely no problems. You can do it anywhere you want. If you have a chair and you have 5 minutes time and you have a little bit of privacy, any one of us can do this. It's a very simple technique. I'm just going to walk you through with it. Please be with me and just follow my voice and try it with an open mind. Let's see what happens, because this is one of the techniques which can actually help you with painful memories. This is why I call it a visualization technique, to help balance ourselves when memories flood. Trust me when I say this. Men are very different from us. Women, we carry memories. Memories is what makes us or breaks us. So if you have a wonderful memory of a great thing, it will bring joy to you. But at the same time, flip the coin and remember something that's painful. Guess what? we go down like a bag of rocks. You know, it's so quick for us, and that is what makes it very hard for us. So this technique is to help you balance such emotions. For example, you're right in the middle of a meeting, and something takes your attention, and all of a sudden you're lost in a memory, and that can happen to many women. So I don't know if it has happened to any one of you, but when that happens, it can be quite painful. So how do you balance yourself when something like that happens? This is a technique that we can try. If you can get comfortable in your seats, can leave your notebooks on the table or the desk that is in front of you or beside your chair. And as you do that, I want you to take a few deep breaths. As you take a few deep breaths, if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. People who are not comfortable with closing your eyes can keep your eyes open. And here we go. We're going to go on a walk. You see a single path road, they call it, a yellow brick line kind of thing. There are beautiful, beautiful mayflower trees on both sides. The trees are in full bloom. You see all the flowers. And of course, when the trees are in full bloom and it's beautiful, you hear a lot of birds singing. You're walking on this path. Sometimes you get the privilege of a shower of a flower falling on you. You feel really, really happy walking on this path. As you're walking on this path, you come to a beautiful stream. The water is crystal clear, and with the enthusiasm of a child, you want to jump into the water. But please wait, you got to remove your shoes. So please take off your shoes, leave it on the shore, and now you can walk into the water. The water feels really, really cold under your feet, and the pebbles are really beautiful. Walk across the stream. You're coming to the other side of the shore. Please walk along the path. You come to a beautiful, beautiful clearing. The grass is so green. It feels fresh. The air is fresh. You can feel the beautiful breeze on your body. And you feel this enthusiasm come into you. You feel like a child walking. As you walk into the field, you see a beautiful marble table. There are stone chairs placed around the table. Pick a chair that you feel comfortable in. Sit down. And as you look down on the table, you see your own reflection. It's a beautiful place. You see a paper and a pencil. Remember the painful memories you wrote down? Just make a note of all those things on this paper. Feel there. Now, fold the paper. Trust me when I say this. Leave it there for the universe to collect it. And the universe will take it away and do what needs to be done with those memories. Feel the burden of these memories leave you, because you've handed it over to a larger strength, a bigger universe that will take care of it. Take a deep breath and let go. Take a deep breath and let go. As you let go, come back. I feel relieved when I do that. So let's keep walking. Come back to the stream. You're walking through the water again. Remember your shoes. Wear your shoes and come back to the webinar. Here we are. It actually took us 5 minutes to do this exercise. This is one of the most powerful exercises. This works even with women who are going through post-traumatic stress disorder, which is one of the most severe kind of disorders, anxiety disorders. So this is one of the techniques which is very, very powerful to balance our emotions when memories flood us. It takes you only 5 minutes. I've had experience doing this technique for more than 10 years, and I've had very good reviews for this exercise. Some of you who are not able to do it, try it a couple of times. Some of you who really felt good about it, please let me know if it worked. Because those things that you wrote down on your papers are supposed to go with this. If you couldn't do it here, please do this technique before going to sleep tonight. Because that will help take the load off of you. And that will actually help you balance. So that's one of the activities I had planned for us today. So moving on. Are we ready to move on? Hopefully so. So here we go. Culture. A beautiful, beautiful country we were born in. We are born in and we are living in. This is, when I was thinking about culture, I was just going like India, you know. And the thing that I put, the first thing that popped up on my screen when I typed Indian culture was this map, you know. It was so appropriate for us today. So what I did was I actually took the map out of this website, mapsofindia.com, and then said this is where I've taken it out of and put it on the slideshow to see how different we are. Actually, we come from such a beautiful, beautiful country called India, and this is where we come from. We are very ancient. Our country is not one of the newer countries. It comes from a very, very ancient culture. We are a very ancient culture. So there are some of the concepts that we follow through with our culture. So just as a review, if you remember about beliefs and values from our last presentation, beliefs are the assumptions we make about ourselves, about others in the world, and about how we expect things to be. Similarly, beliefs are about how we think things really are, what we think is really true, and what therefore expect as likely consequences that will follow from our behavior. So that is a belief. So what is a belief system? Is an actual set of precepts from which you live your daily life, those which govern your thoughts, words, and actions. Without these precepts, you could not function. So this is the definition for beliefs and values. So belief systems actually impact our values. So the cultural belief systems like this is how you're supposed to be in a relationship, for example, will create a value system for us, which is important and enduring beliefs or ideals shared by the members of a culture about what is good or desirable and what is not. Values exert major influence on the behavior of an individual and serve as a broad guideline in all situations. So we had this discussion earlier, but just to jog your memory a little bit, what we want to remember is the values and the beliefs that has come to us from our cultural viewpoint is going to have a major impact on who we are and how we are in relationships. So what it means to be a woman entrepreneur and be in your cultural role. How do we deal with this is the discussion for us. Our culture defines us differently and gives us certain roles and responsibilities. So if we are women entrepreneurs, and how do we deal with this? So what are our cultural norms? For example, a girl is supposed to be like this. A woman is supposed to be like this. An unmarried girl has these responsibilities and roles. A married woman has this say A, B, C. I won't name it. You all know it and I know it. So we don't have to go into that. So the cultural role is very, very important for professionals. especially as a woman, how do you deal with this? How do we deal with this? So before we go back to the next slide, how for this question, one of my main discussion point is understanding our role is the most important thing, and also asking a very important question: what is my belief? What is my value? And what do I believe in? And what do I stand for? These are the four important questions that we need to ask. Becoming aware of my own belief system is going to be so important for me. So if we go back to the belief slide, this is something which I assume about myself. So if I assume that I am supposed to be in a relationship like this, so that could impact what I actually do. So this is an actual set. My belief system becomes an actual set of it's a preset which will impact my values. So for example, if I talk about being truthful in a relationship, I talk about honesty in a relationship all the time, and then people keep thinking like, are you really honest in a relationship? If I create that question in someone else, who's to question now? Who's to ask that question? It's supposed to be mine, right? So knowing your values, for example, these are values: trust, respect, support, comforting others, understanding others, then doing things for others, helping others. These are all value systems. Where did we get it from? From our culture, because they teach us. For example, I give this example in another presentation. When people ask me, in a stress management presentation, I would say, like for example, you have a 5-year-old child and your friend walks in with a 7-year-old child. Let us say that. This 5-year-old child is playing with a toy. When the 7-year-old child walks in, what is your natural response in that situation? I don't know. Mine has always been, share your toy with a friend who has come in. Or sometimes, if the 7-year-old pulls the toy away from my 5-year-old, I'm always saying, it's all right, let them have it. Kanna, you have another toy too. Alright, so what am I teaching my child? It's all right to give something that they have or share something they have, whether they like it or not. So when I believe that sharing is very important, that is a cultural thing, isn't it? So when I believe that and I grow up to be a young woman who's an entrepreneur, and I have to say things where I'm supposed to be saying, sorry, I can't share this with you because this is really, really valuable to me and I'm working on it right now, so I cannot share it. Guess what happens? I can't say that, right? Why? Because I'm going to feel guilty. And when I'm going to feel guilty, I'm going to start feeling bad about it. Oh my God, I'm supposed to help this person, but I did not help this person. So imagine what happens to each and every one of us when you are saying no. It makes us feel very, very uncomfortable in a relationship. And there is fear of losing that relationship just because you said no. Right? So these are the things we are going to start looking at when we look at intimate relationships. Because this is an overview and I'm conscious of the time right now. So we are just going to say these are the pointers, but if you have questions, as always, I sincerely request you to just send us the questions and we will incorporate it into our next webinar. All right? So that is something. How do we deal with this? So understand that the discomfort comes from you, not from the other person. If you actually try to explain this to the other person, we will know how to go about this. All right? So that is the most important thing. Right? Now, example. How do we deal with this is being in a relationship. For example, the way I am in a relationship is most important thing that I need to understand, not the other person. Because for the other person, I'm a friend, I'm a confidant, I'm whatever I am. But I need to understand how I am in a relationship. What is my role? What is my expectation? What is my responsibility? And how I relate to you, and examples. That is what we are going to discuss. My role, for example, let us take a very simple example, which is like between two friends or two colleagues, whichever would be comfortable. So my role as a colleague, if I'm working with another person, how do I understand it? I think of it as a supporting relationship. I think of it as a respectful relationship. And I think of it as when I need help, that person is going to be there to help me. Or when he or she needs help, I'll be there to help them. So if you look at it, those are the roles and expectations. So I see myself as a support person. I see myself as a person who is there when they need me. And I also see myself as a person who is there doing what needs to be done as a team member. Now, my responsibility in this is also there. What is my responsibility? Not only understanding this, also making sure my partner knows that. Hey, you know what? You can actually trust me because I will not betray you. I am trustworthy. So you can actually trust me. And when I say you can trust me, what do I have to do then? I have to be trustworthy in a relationship. I have to maintain that. So how I relate to you, if I want to be respected, what do I do first? I give respect. These are things that have been taught to us always. As a culture, it is taught to us. In our family, it is taught to us. But unfortunately, what is happening is because of the way our time is being set up and the way we keep running from pillar to pole, what is happening? We just leave all these things behind. So we don't have time to understand what the other person is going through. We don't have time to understand what's actually the other person's concern or challenge. We just rush from pillar to pole and unfortunately on the way hurt people as we go through this. So if you recognize this, it would be really, really worth this presentation because once we recognize it, trust me, 8 out of 10 times we will stop ourselves from hurting others, but 2 times we may hurt. So what happens is we become aware when we get upset, we become aware when we do things which really hurt others, and then we tend to sort of be in balance. So learning how to be in balance is what this is all about. That is another example. Another example, for example, another example. Let's take that I'm really busy and there are patients coming in and going out and I have been really busy and I've called for a nurse, let's say, to come and assist me with something that I need. I need a blood test done or I need to send my patient for an investigation and I'm just waiting for them to come. And the nurse shows up, say, my patient is waiting, I'm waiting, say about 3 or 4 minutes later my nurse shows up to help me. How do you react in that situation? What would be your reaction? You asked for something, the person hasn't showed up for 5 minutes, and 5 minutes later, you and the person in front of you are waiting, and the person shows up. What would be your reaction at that point? People may get angry, people may get upset, people may lose it in front of the other person and say, how could you do this? I've been waiting, where have you been? But the reality is, that person was not able to be there because they were doing something else when you called. They were actually dealing with something else. What we think is, I have called you, so you must show up and do what I need. But the reality is the person is doing something else. So they had to finish that and come to us. This is the only thing I want you to understand. So once we understand this key point, what will happen is when they are showing up a little late, I know how to engage my visitor or my patient, and I also know how to stay on keel and not lose it in front of my visitor, right? Because ultimately, it's going to reflect back on me, right? So understanding that is the way I am in a relationship, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it is, sometimes you're not able to hold it cool, but that's all right. Just recognize that. Every time it happens, become aware of what is happening. That sort of actually fine-tunes us in relationships. Next. So, what is important then in a relationship? Boundaries and safety. So in relationship, boundaries. Why boundaries? Because it creates a comfort for both of us. It creates a comfort for everybody that is in whoever is in a relationship. Why those boundaries? When we know this is a person's boundary, we tend to respect it. If we know this is where I stand, I tend to respect that boundary. So create boundaries. We will learn about setting boundaries in our next presentation. So please mark it. and then we will set boundaries in the next presentation. How to set boundaries is a very interesting thing, because we have been taught to serve others, we have been taught to help others, we have been taught to support others. Because that's a cultural thing, we tend to step into someone else's space when they haven't asked for advice or they haven't invited in to give advice. So we tend to cross boundaries in relationships because of that. And why did I talk about safety here? Safety in relationship means that you are trustworthy enough. So you will not break that trust. You will create safety in a relationship by being really, really truthful and really, really trusting and trustworthy. And that is also another thing that we are going to talk about in intimate relationships and of course in professional relationships. This is just a preview we are giving you. All right. So as we finish that, we will move on to what are we going to talk about now. Just in conclusion, to make a sense of the whole thing that we have talked about, relationship takes a lot of work, because it's like, for example, an analogy that I can draw from our lives is, I hope most of you like gardening. If you like gardening and you like plants, how many of you actually water your plants regularly? How many of you really take care of watering your plants, de-weeding it? You know, our plants can develop dead tissue in them, so taking those dead tissue out. Sometimes I am very fond of bamboo. When I used to live in Canada, we used to get these long, foot-long bamboo sticks, you know. And when we get these foot-long bamboo sticks, you know, what would happen is they will have some fungal infection sometimes. And as they have those fungal infection, one of the things I would do is I would actually sit down on weekends, you know, and sit down with a little cutting knife and start actually working with this plant, because I wanted to survive. They are really, really long bamboo sticks and they can grow really well. So they'll make the house so beautiful. It will give you an energy that's so different. So our plants are our things, you know, are very good. I find them very, how it makes me feel really good. It makes me feel safe. It makes me feel wanted. It helps me relax when I spend time with the plants. I live in a flat, so right now it's only pots for me. So because it's pots, what I do is I actually repot them at least once in 2 months or so. So that repotting time actually makes a lot of sense to me. That's how our relationships are. If we take, like from the rock that said, not for granted, you know, when we take our relationships for granted, they fall by the wayside. So taking care of that relationship is very important. Making sure that you do the necessary things. That is what mutual support, mutual respect, mutual understanding, and trust really, really gives us. So the trust that it gives, the trust will create that for us, and also respect will create it for us. So understanding that it doesn't matter how the other person is. I keep doing all this, doctor. What about them? They always hurt me. There's this one particular person who always hurts me. She always gets me. She always puts me down. Or he, for example, always acts like this. This is what my patients tell me. And my answer is very simple. Just see what you are doing, because the reality is you cannot change anybody, or you cannot actually change anything about the other person, what they do. But the only person you can change is yourself. So what are these practical tips? Everybody keeps asking me practical tips. So I put the same word in there, and then I thought, okay, what can I come up with that will actually help you? This is something which I share with my patients. I share this with people I've done presentations on stress management with, which I call Dr. Kamali's the 6 R's. You know, very simple. R is one of my favorite letters because it's my initial, so I really, really love this letter. And then I thought, okay, why not come up with a mnemonic that actually will help people? So this is the 6 R's. Basically, recognize, rethink, reconsider, read, relax, and relive. This is what my 6 R's are. And this honestly did not come out of any of the books or anywhere else. It truly is from my own experience that I came up with this. Why do I say, whether it is stress management, whether it is relationships, or whether it is anything that you're going through, any problem, this is transferable knowledge. You can take it right like that and use it in your day-to-day living, and it will really, really help you. For example, recognize. Recognize what is going on. Recognize what is the problem that you're struggling with. Recognize, for example, this is because this is a relationship. Recognize the nuances of a relationship. If it is a friend you're struggling with, if it's your spouse you're struggling with, or if it's a child who are struggling with, or if it's a teenage daughter or a son you have and you're struggling with them. Recognize the problem first, because if you don't recognize it, you're going to struggle with it forever. So recognize it. Now, the next step is rethink. Rethinking is not about the other person. Not rethinking what he has been doing or what she has been doing. Rethink what have I been doing. Because it is me who is in this relationship, I take responsibility for it. So rethink it. When you rethink, please be honest with yourself. Nobody else needs to know anything. Because once you become honest with yourself and tell yourself the truth, guess what happens? You will start reconsidering. You will reconsider your course of action and course of your action. Course of your action is what you've been doing, how you could do something differently. And then how you're going to do that different thing is the next step, right? That is what reconsider will help you with. Read a little bit about your struggle, because people usually expect experts to give them the advice, or expect the experts to tell you what's going on. For example, a person who struggles with diabetes will expect a doctor to tell them everything about diabetes, or a person who has marital problems in a relationship, husband-wife issues, or children and parents issues. They have all these issues, or relationship issues, let's say. What do they expect? The expert to tell it and fix the relationship, If I come to you, doc, you fix it, And the reality is, there's only so much a professional who spends about half an hour with you can do, Half an hour versus 23 and a half an hour. It's quite a long time that you live with yourself. So, read a little bit about what you're struggling with. Let's say it is closeness in a relationship, or trust issues in a relationship, something like that. When you read a little bit about it, if you can't find the right websites or anything, send a query, ask for information. So that will help you understand what is going on, or tips on how to be in a good relationship, how to recognize a good relationship, things like that. After you read it, don't get too overworked about it or overstressed about it. Relax. It's all right. Now that you know what is going on, you have to learn to relax, right? Only then will you be able to move from that point on. Because if you read, get the knowledge, gain the knowledge, and then get stuck, what is the point in knowing so much? So for us to move on, we need to relax. And understand, relaxing simply means become patient. Have some patience. Give yourself time and energy to change, because we can't change overnight the same way that we give others the chance. For example, in our communities, we actually give other people a long rope to change, But unfortunately, we are overcritical with ourselves. We get very downright and critical with ourselves, so we are not able to do something with ourselves, If I do a mistake, I blame myself and punish myself 10 times more. Example only, guys, not me. All right? So punish yourself more than you would others. There is the flip side of this coin too. Complain, 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 and leave it on the other person and not take responsibility for the problem, That also happens. So be aware of these things and give yourself time, relax. And then once change starts happening inside you, guess what happens? You start reliving a new life. And it's the reality in relationships. It's the reality in stress management. It's a reality in anything new you're going to try. Whatever new you're going to try, if you just see through these 6 hours, I have found very high success with this. Because guess what? I just tried on myself first before coming out and saying this works. Right? So it really, really is a very helpful tool. This is the practical tip I wanted to share with you this weekend, because this is something which really is very helpful, and people have found it helpful. My patients have found it helpful. I hope this helps for you too. So next, before we go and come to the end of the session, here is something I just found Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorite authors. Relationships do not cause pain and unhappiness, he says. They bring out the pain and unhappiness that is already in you. Basically, he's asking us to take responsibility for who we are in our relationships. And to end this session, happiness is not a matter of how your outer life appears to someone else. Happiness is a state of consciousness. So it doesn't matter how your life looks on the outer. It doesn't matter what others feel about it. Happiness is a state of consciousness. So it's how you feel inside you that matters. As long as you feel stable, as long as you feel happy, as long as you feel balanced inside yourself, life is one, guys. That's what it is about, being in a relationship. And thank you so much for being with me today. We are here for your questions. You're absolutely welcome to type in your questions, and we'll take your questions. Thank you.
You may please type in your questions in the little chat box right on your right corner and ask Dr. Kamli about for her advice. Wait for 5 minutes, and then if we don't have any questions, so what to do? Do you have a slide with that? I can write it down. You give me.
Probably.
Any further questions if you have on this topic, you may please contact Dr. Kamali. I'm just sharing her mobile number as well as the mail ID. You can write back to her. Her number is 9952001587. Her mail ID is Dr. Kamali, R for Rose, S for Sugar, @gmail.com, or Dr. Kamali @kaverihospital.com. Thank you so much for being with us on the session. Next session is on 20th of June, same time, 2:30 to 4 o'clock. Thank you.